Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. I just want to honor Stephen and Delisa as our pastor and our pastor's wife. They're just a couple that just cares about you. I think sometimes people don't just realize. You just don't understand the time. Beth and I had the honor. We went over to dinner with them the other night. I think they were still feeding their whole family. There was enough chicken to feed me and me and me and all their kids. And Beth's like, well, you ate a lot of chicken. And I was like, well, there was a lot of chicken. I had to eat it. But it was really because I needed to get ready because we taught Stephen and Delisa a new game. And somehow I won. That does not happen very often. If you've ever played games with Stephen and Delisa in your life, there's a little bit of competition there. But it's only because we taught them a new game and they were like, bring that game back. We'll try it again. You could just see it in their eyes. You could see it. Like, we're going to lose every time we come. But I just want to honor them and just thank them, not just for their leadership, but for their love and their friendship. Beth and I appreciate that so much. Growing up as a PK, as Stephen said, I saw that. I can remember a few people throughout my parents' lives that they're still close to because it's hard being in that role. You can't be nice and be friends with everybody, but you can be. It's just an awkward situation because of just being in that role. And I just remember that growing up. So I just want to thank you for your friendship, but just thank you how you both serve Living Waters Church. Can we honor them today and just thank them for that? I just appreciate it. And I want to thank my mom and dad who are here today. You know, my dad years ago had asked me if I felt called to be a pastor in any way. I think he really just wanted to start cleaning out his bookshelves when I was younger in college. And when I said no, I did not feel that call. But yet Beth and I have served in lay ministry our entire lives. And a lot of Dad's books and commentaries I actually have in my house now anyway. I've asked him for them and his special ones and a Bible that a pastor that was his mentor I have in our house that I've kept. And I just honor and thank them for just how they taught and raised us as kids, just to honor the nation that we live in. Not to always to think that we get it right. I'm going to put that as a preference today. The United States of America gets it wrong as often, if not more often, than we get it right. Amen? But so does every nation in the world. And when I read the scriptures in the Bible, Israel, which is declared a nation that is special, set apart for God, they got it wrong a lot. But God still honored them when they followed and honored Him. That's the key. For us as a nation, the United States of America, as long as we are seeking and going after Him, God will return that. Still doesn't mean we're going to get it all right. Still doesn't mean we're going to make all the right decisions. No nation will, no political leader will, no party will, ever, until Jesus returns. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. So we as Christians, I think, get told a lot of times that we need to kind of look down on our nation, and there's something wrong if we're too much looking at our nation as, well, we weren't founded by God. And we're there like, I would say, well, if we weren't founded by Christian principles, then what principles were we founded by? And if we were founded by other principles, then there's a problem, because if we're not following Christ's principles, we're going to follow something else. There's no middle of the road. There's no middle of the road. Being a military guy, I'm looking at what's going on in the Middle East right now. There's lots of different things about thoughts of, is our current administration doing the right thing? Is the Middle East doing the right thing? Is Israel doing the right thing? But I can tell you, having been a military guy for over 30 years, I look at it and go, if somebody doesn't do something and deal with the problem won't go away, and someone will fill the vacuum. And it'll probably be worse than the vacuum that's there now. It just is going to happen. It's the way the world is. So I just want to start off with that, letting you know that don't think today that my talk is really about a party or a person or administration or any of that. It's more about how are we standing up and being accountable as a Christian nation. Well, so if any of you are following or not following right now, the World Cup's going on, right? Any football? It's soccer. I don't know why they call it football. It's soccer. Soccer fans, if you're not following it, it's actually pretty interesting. For me, I enjoy it more than I would ever watch professional football in our country, which is horrible. College football, that's another story. But I will watch European, round the world, professional football, because that's pretty cool. Because I watched the other day the U.S. in an awesome match. They're going to win, and then they lost in the last 2-3 seconds. I mean, it was just but it didn't matter because it's football, and there's a weird way that they do it. They still go on to the next round. It's soccer. It's the way that it works. But we have all these people that are visiting the United States right now. So I'm going to read you something that I found the other day talking about this. That talks about all these people that are visiting America, the United States for the first time. And they had all these perceptions of what the United States was like. Either from their media in their country, their politicians, what they've seen on social media, or unfortunately, what they've watched on TV about America, that everybody wears cowboy boots, or wears cowboy boots and wears cowboy hats, right? I actually met a lady once on a plane from Slovakia. She was in Texas, and she said I didn't understand it. I was there for 5 days, and I didn't meet anybody with boots and a cowboy hat. She's like, one night, we all walked into our hotel, and there was a guy wearing a cowboy hat and boots. She said, we all ran over and hugged him and took our picture with him. The guy was like, okay, all right. All right, so this is what was said about the World Cup. It says the World Cup has turned America into a discovery channel for the rest of the world, and they are not handling it well. In the best way possible, here's what they're discovering: free public restrooms. Europeans pay. If you've never been in Europe, you pay every time you go in the bathroom. You do. Guys, there's women cleaning your bathrooms, and you just drop a coin while you do what you got to do. It's just kind of weird. It's just the way that it is. Free water at every restaurant. It just appears. Free refills, coffee, soda, iced tea. And then somebody says, do you want sweet or unsweet? And you don't know what to do. Unlimited free chips and salsa before you order. Free warm bread. Iced drinks like civilized people without having to ask. Air conditioning everywhere, and it's not a moral debate. Parking lots attached to the actual place you are going. Drive-thrus where food comes to the car while you sit in it. Ranch dressing by the gallon. Tex-Mex that cannot be explained, only experienced. Amen to that. Tex-Mex will be in heaven, and biscuits and gravy, although it will probably have to be a vegan version. I don't know how we're going to work that out, but it doesn't matter. It's going to be there. Buc-ee's, no words for Buc-ee's. It just is. Then they go to a grocery store, 5 of them within 1 mile, each one the size of an aircraft hangar. Burgers, steaks, brisket, pulled pork, every cut of animal, every domesticated animal ever seen available in a refrigerated aisle at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. The Germans stand in the meat section for 45 minutes in silence. That's probably not true, right, Elizabeth? This is what they're saying. They wondered before they came here, why don't we have trains? And then they realized, well, they don't need trains. Their roads are wide enough for the cars that they actually drive. They have parking lots the size of small European countries. That is true. That is true. Airports in every city. Why would we need trains? We can just fly there. The Germans are taking ranch home by the bottle. The Dutch found queso and lost the ability to speak. The Japanese are photographing Heb. That's a grocery store down in the south around Texas, if you haven't ever been there. Like it's the Louvre. And the Czechs are weeping in West Texas. Welcome to America, the greatest country on earth. So that's what the World Cup fans are experiencing. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk more about we as a nation have been founded on Christian principles. Some people will argue with you that we haven't. Some people will say we have. And I'm going to talk through that today to help you kind of understand why I believe that that is. Now, some would say that I'm going to be up here today and they'll watch this video afterwards and they're going to say, oh, that guy, he's a Christian nationalist. He wants the government to be in charge of religion and everybody should be a Christian and da-da-da-da. That would be the worst thing possible because it's the government. They would get it wrong to start with in any nation, right? But that's not what our founding fathers established for our nation. That's not the direction that God pointed them to when our nation was founded. But if somebody does call me a Christian nationalist, I only think of it in the frame that if I want Christ to be reflected in my nation versus the alternative, they call me that all day long. That's okay. If that's a label, people label something every day. Every day. You watch it in the news, you see social media. Every day, people are labeled racist, Nazis. You make it up. What was the word the other day my wife said? Somebody at work, she said was labeled an unfrosted Pop-Tart. I got to find that one out. I got to figure that one out. I forgot to look that up. An unfrosted Pop-Tart. It's probably not nice. It probably isn't. I want to live in a nation that reflects Jesus Christ in everything that it decides and does. But even in a nation that reflects Jesus Christ, or when we see in the Bible, Israel, they still don't get it right all the time, right? Leaders still make mistakes because why? They're human. None of them are Jesus. No one, God has never appointed on earth a political leader that is God. There are some political leaders that think they're God. There are. In history, in nations, it's not a new thing. There are many people that have said that, thought that they were appointed by a deity somehow to rule over their nation. They're not. I want to live in a nation where we're imperfect humans that are transformed by Jesus Christ. That's the type of nation I want to live in. There are other nations in this world that are like that. There are. You can read about them. You can see them. My son Tyler spent time a few years ago in Kenya, and we talked a lot about how they embraced Christ. There are African nations, especially, that have turned away American church denominations because their denominations actually are following the Bible. Oh, God forbid. Imagine that. But then there are nations that are doing the complete opposite. In the Bible, it says in Psalms 31:12, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen as his heritage." Now, I'm going to sit here and say, are we a chosen people? Nope, there's only one chosen people. The Bible only talks about one chosen nation, and that's the nation of Israel. Don't put that word in my mouth. I'm not going to say that. I do think, though, we are a nation that has been called to stand up for the right principles, do the right things, and then God will honor that. The Bible talks about a nation that stands with, and supports Israel. God will bless and honor that nation. Nations that stand for and do the right things, you can see throughout history, where things happen in their history that should not happen, other than there has to have been a reason that God must have been involved, intervened, because they were doing the things right morally, right in their decisions, even if the leaders around them were not making the right decisions. I was in the military for 33 years, and I saw that in the U.S. military. Actually, a couple times, Justin and I were at lunch the other day, and we were talking about that, that I had a leader that was put over me at one time that I really was like, oh, Lord, this cannot be the person that you're going to put over me. This is not who I want to work for. This is not a good idea. And God just sat back, didn't give me any clue other than that person put me in a leadership position, and then God moved them along to do something else and put a Christian man over me as my boss, who to this day I still respect. And then the next leader behind him was a Christian man. So God uses people, even though they are not following him, to put things in place in the direction that he wants to go. I'm going to talk a little bit today about different statements that have been made by some of our founding fathers. One is the highest. This is from the sixth president of the United States, John Quincy Adams. His father was John Adams, the second president. He said, the highest glory of the American Revolution was this: it connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. And he's equating that the American Revolution, the only reason it was successful is the founding fathers were actually basing what they were doing on Christian principles. Were all of the founding fathers of our nation Christians? Anybody know the answer to that one? No, they were not. But God used them anyway. God used them to write documents and things that they said and procedures and things they put in place that were going to go the right direction. But they also put some things in place in our original Constitution that we're going to talk about that we got wrong from the get-go. We really did. But so did everybody else. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. Our own current president said the other day with a group of religious leaders in the Oval Office, President Trump said, America was founded by people of faith, and it was settled as a haven for religious freedom. And we must also remain one nation under God. We will never let that phrase be stolen from us. We shouldn't. We shouldn't. If we're going to put it on our money, if we're going to put it on things, we'd better mean it. And the challenge that I'll tell you today is that we have to be very careful as Christians that some are going to argue with us and say that because of some of the things in our past and our current, there's no way we could be a Christian nation. There's people that are going to argue that with you all day long. That's okay. That's the nice thing about America. Everybody gets an opinion. Good ones and bad ones. Good ones and bad ones. It's okay. Doesn't mean I have to agree with somebody that I dislike. I don't know if you've ever listened to that. He's a very controversial guy. But if you've ever seen a clip, I don't watch him on TV, but I'll see clips of a guy named Bill Maher. He's on HBO. Guy has a potty mouth like you wouldn't believe. I wouldn't recommend that you watch him if you don't want to see that type of thing. But I see his clips every once in a while when he will interview people. He interviews people that disagree with him completely in the political realm. But at least he's willing to have a conversation with them, respect them enough to have a conversation, argue with them why he doesn't agree with them, and respect them when they walk off of his TV show and say, hey, at least they came and had a conversation. That's something that our country needs more of us being able to sit down with people that we don't agree with and have conversations with them about things like this. Some of the things that people would say that make us not capable of being a Christian nation would be slavery in our past, abortion, all the wars that we've fought in. I would say about slavery, just to start, every nation on this earth had slaves at one point, and a lot still do. Slavery is more prevalent today than it has ever been. Don't let anybody tell you it's not. People might want to pretend. The United Nations could pretend till they're blue in the face that it doesn't exist. It is a lie. Sexual slavery, children in bondage, and slavery is more rampant than it has ever been. That's why there's more Christian organizations that are stepping into it, standing up for it, and fighting against it, because it has not gone away. It has not. Abortion. Abortion was a conscious decision that was sanctioned by our nation in 1973 with the Supreme Court decision of Roe v. Wade. And we have and we will pay for that sin as a nation. I think we probably have in many ways that we've not realized, and we will continue to if there's not complete repentance and a stopping of that in our nation. Thankfully, in 2022, the Supreme Court overturned the decision. However, it didn't stop it. It didn't stop it. It's actually grown. So don't think as Christians, got that one done, check that box, woo, all good. It's not. It's grown. There's more other ways to do it. Evil will always find a way to do that. And it's growing around the world. But let me just say today, if you're a man or woman that experienced that at some point in your life, God is not going to hold that over you. If you will accept His love, accept His restoration, I think as Christians we need to say that more often. That we sometimes, I can be guilty of that. We think like, well, this is the sin that, God can't. Oh, really? Really? I've got some sins in my past that I ought to be going, you really think God's forgiven you for that? Yes, I know. Because the blood of Jesus Christ forgave me of that. I know. So if you've experienced that as a man or woman at some point in your life, there is grace and forgiveness and love through the Son of Jesus Christ. And in this church, you will find people that love you exactly where you're at and will help you walk through that. Some people will say because of all the wars we've been in. Well, I'm an army guy, and I'm all about let's get some war going. I'm just kind of silly about that. Sometimes people look at me, and I look at what's going on with Iran. I was in the military for 33 of the 47 years, and I'm like, it's about time. But that's because I look at it from a different perspective. I have friends that were killed by Iran. I should be forgiving. As a military guy, it's a little harder to look that direction. It is. It is. Beth sometimes says, please let's not talk politics or war or stuff. It's hard because in my head as a former military guy, I think different ways. People look at wars that our nation has fought in, like the American Revolution. How could we have rebelled against England when the Bible says in Romans 13, we should be submitting to government authorities? That's how our nation was founded. We basically told the king, gave him a big raspberry, said, we're not following you anymore. We're not paying your taxes. We're throwing your tea in the harbor. And we're moving on. We drank tea before we drank coffee, if you didn't know that. Yeah, coffee wasn't a thing. It's tea. Some Christians especially Quakers and other modern pacifists believe that participation in war is incompatible with following Christ. I joined the military when I was going through college through a military officer training program, and I had a major who was my instructor in one of my classes, and he was a Vietnam veteran. And that came up in our class one day. How can we be Christians coming through a Christian nation and wanting to go serve in a place, in an organization that we might have to go kill our fellow man? And he answered the question this way. He said, the issue is, he said, I see serving in the U.S. military as serving in a mission field. And he said, if you serve in that mission field wholeheartedly the way that you're called to serve, God will deal with what you're required to do in war. And it really changed my thought process that if I saw going in the military as it being a mission field, then all those other things God would help me work out and deal with and work through along the way. Throughout history, Christians have been divided on this topic. Some people, there's the pacifist tradition that think one way, and then others might have the just war tradition. So we look at all these three things, this slavery, abortion, and wars, and those are things that people might say, there's no way that they could be a Christian nation. But I said at the beginning, if you're not a nation that's walking towards Christian principles, you're going to walk towards some other types of principles. You just will. You will. There's no gray area. You're either going to walk as a nation towards the direction God would have you go, knowing you're going to not get it all right, knowing that you're not going to do everything the way that it's supposed to be done, or you're going to walk another direction. And I think we look through the Bible and we can see example after example. We see godly rulers, we see ungodly rulers, and we see the repercussions of that throughout history. President John Adams, the second president of the United States, said, the general principles on which the founding fathers achieved independence were the only principles in which that beautiful assembly of young gentlemen could unite. And what were these general principles? The principles of Christianity. Recently, Pastor Josh Howerton said in a post about 3 days ago, I was actually looking for something from him, and he said, because the strategy of secularist is anyone that wants to say government, people, anything that we're doing can't be part of Christ. It has to be all separate. Anything to do with God and religion has to be a private matter done on your own, away from government. You can't make decisions of that. He said, because of the strategy of secularists to rewrite the past to control the future, how do we keep Christians from influencing the legislated morality of a country and continue its hurl toward evil? You do this by deceiving people that the U.S. never was largely influenced by Christianity in the past, so it never should be in the future. And if you pay attention to what's going on in the world, in the United States now more than ever, that has become in the last few years more and more of a thing that is attacking our nation. And I did not dig into it, but I bet if you dug into any nation in this world where a leader or a person professes or talks about their faith openly, I guarantee you they are being attacked for that faith over and over and over again. I guarantee you they are. So there's people that want to deceive us and say that, hey, we weren't influenced by Christianity. It shouldn't be part of what we were in the past. That way, then they can say, well, good. Well, then it doesn't need to be part of what we're doing. We're enlightened. We don't need that as part of our lives now. You're seeing that in parts of Europe. Europe used to be a much more Christian part of the world than it was today. Now there's parts of that country, of Europe, I think of it as a country because of the European Union now, but Europe is changing. There are pockets of outbreaks of revival happening across Europe in churches. We went to the Grow Leader Conference last year, some of the leaders here from the church down in Alabama, and we met a couple from Germany, Vipka and her husband, and I get a chance to just reach out to them every once in a while and pray for them, and they live in northern Germany where they've started a church. Their church only has the ability to meet in a building once a month. The rest of the month, they meet in home groups. And they are seeing in this small town in northern Germany, baptisms, people coming to Christ left and right, because they have a generation of people in their nation that are saying, if this is it, if this is all you wanted to show us, of all these enlightened things of let's take Christ out of everything, let's get rid of all of this, they talked about that they are seeing, when I talk to them, about how Christ is moving and changing lives, because their nation saw what the other option is, and they don't want that anymore. They want to be a nation that follows Christ, even if it's just through couples here and there. That verse I talked about in the beginning, Psalm 33:12, that says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen as his heritage." It ties to our own declaration of independence, because it talks about a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. That line is in our Declaration of Independence. Some of the founders actually spoke of the protection of God's favor when founding our new nation. You see that a lot with George Washington and some of the other founders. The book of Deuteronomy, we don't have this verse up here, but Deuteronomy 28:1 says, "And if you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all his commandments that I command you today, the Lord God will set you high above all the nations on the earth." And that's not saying that a nation that gets it right, oh, you're better than everybody else. No, that's not what it's talking about. It's, in my mind, when I read that, it's being set high, that you're following the principles that you should be following, and then people will look at you and go, they seem to be doing better and making better decisions. Why are they different? Well, because they're following Christ. I don't know if you followed, I always say his last name wrong, but Bukele, the new president of El Salvador, who is a devout follower of Christ. He's a Catholic. He talks about his faith openly. Their nation has turned around and gone a different direction than it has. He gets a lot of grief because he talks about his faith as the leader of their nation. Now, politically, he's doing things that people could go, or that's great. That's a different argument. But he is making sure that the direction they're doing and the things that they're doing are putting them in a path that they can make a difference in their part of the world. Right now, other than the United States, if you dig into some of the details, the nation right now that is doing more to help Venezuela right now is their nation. They've pushed more people, more resources, and I don't think that's happened just because they're trying to do the right thing. I think it's because they're standing for the right thing. And they've been blessed enough with resources that they can do the right thing, because they've turned a corner and said, we're going to go a different direction. Our own Declaration of Independence talks about this. It says at the beginning, which was passed by Congress on July 4, 1776, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Then it goes on to say, we hold these truths self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So from beginning in that Declaration of Independence, we were actually understanding who we were imploring and asking to help us to establish a nation. We didn't ask the king for permission. We just basically told the king we're doing it, whether you like it or not, which if you read anything about history, that was the craziest, stupidest thing in the world. That was just nuts. That'd be like Liechtenstein taking on Poland, or Sweden taking on all of the European Union, or the United States taking on the world compared to today. It was a crazy idea that our founding fathers had, but they felt so aggrieved, so much that they were being oppressed politically and still religiously by the king, that they did not see any other way than to become independent and to do that. But when they did it, they did these things that I just talked about, that they implored that God, their Creator, would help them, would oversee them, would protect them. Later on, it talks about divine providence, and that we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And that honor, they knew, was derived from the providence that God had given them. Some people think that our nation wasn't founded on Christian principles, but if you go back and read, there was a landmark study in 1984 by a Donald Lutz that says the Bible was the single most cited source between 1760 and 1805. Pamphlets, sermons, debates, anywhere else in conversations. Twice as often is something called, Montesquieu's The Spirit of Laws, which others think is the leading source, but it's just the leading secular source. So we talked about here a minute ago about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So when the United States was founded, people came before then, before the original 13 colonies. People were coming here seeking a place where they could have a better life. They were seeking a place where they could establish something new, where the Pilgrims, the Quakers, and the others that came behind them, they could come and find a place where they were not being persecuted religiously. And they saw this as an opportunity. Yes, there were people that saw America and this new land as a place of economic opportunity as well. Yes, that was very much a part of it. But they saw it, those original religious groups saw it as a place where they could have a new start. But when they did that, they kind of made a mistake from the get-go. And one of the ways that we got life wrong had to do with the issue of slavery that I mentioned before. I'll start off by saying that in no way am I excusing slavery. It is not acceptable, never was. Unfortunately, every single nation in the world has done it. It still happens because we're a fallen world. Unfortunately, there are people that think the U.S. should be held to a higher standard when it comes to this issue. Okay, I agree. I don't have an issue with that. Because when I was in the U.S. military, we were taught that we were always held to a higher standard than other nations in how we fought our wars. We were. There were rules that we followed in the law of war that other people were like, law of war, blow up, kill, do whatever you got to do, nothing sacred. Who cares? We can see that right now with what's going on, the fighting between Russia and Ukraine. Nothing's off limits. They don't care. They don't care that whatever it is to get their goal, they're not worried about it. I'm merely trying to kind of use slavery as an example of why we were founded on Christian principles. There's two current key differences in philosophy. There's one thing that ties to something called the 1619 Project. It was one of the arguments. That America was built on slavery. Everything that we do is wrong. Everything that we did is based on racism. And it's critical of all of our traditional Christian founding narratives. There's other things that have come out, been written. One was the 1776 Commission, but there's other many things. That America was built on liberty. We don't always get it right, but we focus on what's right when it matters. We view history through ideals, and that we are looking more towards equality. And we didn't get it right at the beginning, but we figured it out along the way. I see those two differences as looking at the United States from either a direction of hope or a direction of negativity. Either you have hope in a nation if you're following Christ that you're going to do the right thing and go the right directions, or you're a negative Nancy, sorry Nancy, she's not in here anymore, negative Nancy that's always like, no, you're bad, da-da-da-da, everything you do is wrong, da-da-da-da. I can't look at the world that way. I run a business, and Stephen's heard me say this many times when I've been helping out with the church with things. I don't see things as problems when I work with my clients. They're challenges. Challenges you can overcome, problems you probably never will, or you won't even try. I see a lot of the ways that we found the way our country was founded were challenges that we need to overcome. And slavery was the one that took us the longest. The longest. We were not one of the first nations to stop the slave trade. We were 13th. It took us a while to get around to it. It was William Wilberforce who is most credited for leading the movement to end slavery in England. They founded an organization in 1787. They banned the slave trade in 1807. Then they enforced it with their navy. And through their navy diplomatic pressure, they freed over 150 1,000 slaves between 1807 and 1860. But it took England until 18, it actually took them almost 50 years, to solve it as a nation. Our U.S. Constitution, written in 1787, actually had a clause in it that's referred to as the slave trade clause, but it doesn't mention slavery anyway, that limited the U.S. being allowed to ban the slave trade until 1808. So we actually wrote it in our Constitution that we couldn't do anything about it until 1808. And that was done specifically because they were trying to bring groups together of colonies that were in what? The North and the South, which kind of became an issue a little later on, right? Abraham Lincoln came along later, and some people didn't say it was, but I would argue that the war between the North and the South really was over slavery. And that's actually what Abraham Lincoln, when you read a lot of the things about him, that's what he actually pointed it to, because he knew it was what needed to be done because of his convictions that started to happen, because it was also the only way to save the Union of the United States. We fought that Civil War, and over, the original numbers said 620,000, but now they think over 750,000 people died, soldiers died in the Civil War. Black and white. Black and white. Abraham Lincoln in 1863, he did what we all know as the Emancipation Proclamation, which didn't solve slavery. All it said was you can't trade slaves in the Confederate States. Didn't solve it for the rest of the country. Didn't solve it in Kentucky and all the border states. Does anybody know why? Because they were afraid that Kentucky and other states would join the Confederacy. Do you know why we have so many counties in the state? Does anybody know that? Because we couldn't figure out which side we wanted to be on, so counties split like crazy during the Civil War. I actually served in a military unit that before it was changed, I served in an armor brigade that our streamers, military units have streamers on their colors that represent their unit that go into battle. Our regiment, the 149th Regiment, which traced its history all the way back to the Civil War, we had more streamers on our regimental colors than any other military unit in the United States military. A unit from Kentucky that traced its heritage back through some active duty units. That was because for every battle during the Civil War, we had a streamer that had blue and gray, and then we had another streamer for the same battle that said gray, that was gray and blue, because we had history of units that fought for both sides during the Civil War. Because we as a state couldn't make up our mind of what to do. So we kind of tore everything apart. It took the United States until 1865 with the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. As I had said, we were the 13th nation to do this in the 1800s, so we didn't get it right early on. It took until 1868 for the 14th Amendment, which gave citizenship and equal rights to slaves. And then the 15th Amendment in 1870, which gave black men, not women, black men, because women weren't allowed to vote back then, if you didn't know, the right to vote. But it still took us until 1964 and 1965, Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, before we actually implemented those. So if you've been doing the math, which I'm sure you haven't, that's 189 years. So some of you are going, why is he talking about slavery so much? We as a nation took from our founding 189 of our 250 years to figure that issue out. But yet I'm standing up here telling you that we're a nation founded on Christian principles. The two don't match. The only way that I can put it together is when I read the Constitution and how it was written by the Founding Fathers. They put things in place knowing that slavery was part of the world they lived in. They put things in place that would allow it to be changed. Just like England had to pass laws and use their military to change it, and it took them over 50 years. And if you don't know, if you haven't read history, the Navy of England at the time ruled the world. I love reading about British and U.S. naval history. I have read lots of books on it. Nobody held a candle to them. Now they're lucky if they get one ship out of the harbor a week. They're just pathetic. They're really pathetic as a nation when it comes to their Navy. It's sad. They have more ships in maintenance than they ever have out in the world. It's a history that they've lost as a nation. So why do I say as a Christian nation that we could do that? I look at things like what Abraham Lincoln wrote in a letter in 1864. He said, I am naturally anti-slavery. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. I cannot remember when I did not think so and feel. But Lincoln didn't always and wasn't always able to do the right things to make that change. George Washington, he owned slaves as our first president. But he knew that slavery was so much a founding of our nation that there had to be ways when he was part of writing our Constitution, that it had to be dealt with, even if it couldn't be dealt with during his lifetime. But he made sure that it was dealt with in his own personal life. He made sure that on his death, in his will, all of his slaves were freed. And then his wife, who owned her own slaves from a previous marriage, who were her husband's, actually she released all of her slaves. So he actually walked out his convictions that I guarantee you Christ had put on him throughout his life. I kind of also look at it this way when people try to hold that issue over us as a nation. Yes, it was wrong. Yes, it was horrible. Yes, it was part of our founding. But I also look at today in the world of how we treat Germany as a nation. Germany and the world went through World War I, World War II, which was a lot focused on the Austro-Hungarian Empire, how the world treated them badly, and then Nazism, socialism, formed, and then we had World War II, the Nazis. To this day, we don't walk around every time we meet somebody from Germany and go, I bet your grandpa was one of them there Nazis, wasn't he? We don't. I've spent time living in Germany with German families. I met a guy, served in the grandfather of the family I lived with. He served in the German military. I don't know which branch, he didn't talk about it. He actually looked like Hitler. He had a mustache that looked like that. But he was the nicest man I ever met, but we don't hold that over them. Because along the way, we figured out as a world of how if we keep doing that, then we will always be divided and that we will never be able to move on to what God has for us. Another example of how Germany has done that, in my time in Germany, when I've been there many times, but one of my visits back in the 2000s, I got to go to Dachau concentration camp. It was one of the smaller camps. 10 to 12,000 Jews were killed there. But it wasn't the largest camp, which was Auschwitz. 1.1 million were killed there. But one of the things that I asked about, and I looked up earlier this week to be sure it was still the same, it's compulsory in German education for children to learn about that period in their history. Not say that, oh, it's okay, it happened, let's pretend it didn't happen, let's rewrite history. No, that's not what happened. They learn about it, they understand it, they accept it, the world accepts it, and we learn from it, and now we move on to what is next. I think that's one of the strongest cases of why life in this country tied to slavery is so important. There are people that are trying to use that as an issue in our nation right now to use that particular issue, race and slavery, to divide us more than ever. There are people that I did some digging just to see how bad. I read more in the last couple weeks of Christians bashing on other Christians about this issue than I could believe. I just didn't realize how much there are where Christians are blaming other Christians for something that they didn't do, their grandparents didn't do, their great-grandparents didn't do, their great-great-grandparents didn't do, their great-great, instead of finding ways to learn from it, move on from it in the sense of how do we learn from it, not pretend it didn't happen, how do we learn from it, and how do we respect that we have different opinions about it. But as a Christian nation, how does God use those godly principles that we were founded on to keep moving forward? See what I'm talking about? Another area that I see this is important is in liberty. We as a nation were founded on religious liberty. Our own First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law representing the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Some people want to say that means we should be a nation freedom of religion. Doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It says that we get to establish religion. We get to have religion. Even we don't agree with the other religion. I don't agree with people that are Muslim and what they stand for and what they do, but I live in the United States of America. They are more than welcome to build a mosque where they want. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do the right things to say, hey, I know a better way. There is a better way to follow in your life because that's something that separates us differently. But there's also the side where there's people that say our government should do everything they can. We shouldn't mention God. We should take in God we trust off of everything. We should take that off of our things. That's not what the founding fathers were talking about. That's not what Madison was talking about when he wrote it. James Madison, he was the author of the First Amendment. He said, religion must be left to the conviction and conscience of every man. He knew it had to be an individual decision. And it is the right of every man to exercise it as they dictate. The right is in its nature an unalienable right, meaning we all have the right to have religion. Now, we know as followers of Christ, that's the right decision because we've read the book, right? We know how it ends. Now God gives us the opportunity in a Christian nation of how to share what's right, share His truth, not our truth, His truth, love people that don't agree with us, it's okay, they don't agree with us, and let the love of Christ change them and show them how freedom of religion lets us have what they're talking about, liberty, versus having some people that want their own truth, their own version, and their own way to do it. That's how I see that tying together with that. George Washington said during his farewell address in 1796, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And you have to remember they were coming from the context of not just religion, they were coming from the context of Christ, the Christian church, and coming from through the context of understanding Christ being in our nation. The last one is the pursuit of happiness. There's two types of happiness that you can see in our nation now. We can see the type of me, mine, what's best for me, what do I want, what do I get, what's reality TV show me. A lot of athletes, not all, but a lot of athletes, a lot of politicians. That's the type of happiness that they're talking about. It's not unique. It's not like, I don't think we should ever sit here and say, well, it's worse today than it's ever been. I don't know, have you ever read some things about the Roaring 20s? If you read much about, some of you were in the 60s and 70s. I mean, any time in our nation or our world's history, you can see it. True happiness, though, we know comes from serving others and one to lay down their life for another while we're following Christ. That's part of what it means to be a believer. I saw this in the military. I served in an all-volunteer force, and that hasn't always been the case, even for people that were in draft eras and served or got pulled into the military. You can see that when they serve not for the money, the glamour, most of them don't. The ones that do, they don't last very long. But they serve because they're there to serve their fellow man. When I went out on combat patrols in Afghanistan, armed with my AR-15 and my 9mm Beretta on my side and all my body armor, I wasn't riding in an MRAP. I wasn't going, I wonder when my next paycheck's going to be. I sure can't wait till I get promoted again. I was thinking about the men and women that were sitting by me while we're going down the road going, man, I hope we don't hit an IED today, because I really don't want to have to get in a firefight. But if I do, I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know I'm supposed to do this, and he's going to do that, and she's going to do that, and we're all going to defend this, and we're going to protect each other till our guys around us that are part of our security can do what they got to do. That's how I thought of it. That's how I had to think of it. So I go back to talking about those three things, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's people that want to take away those three things as part of the founding of our nation. They want to say that life's not important because we as a nation didn't treat life importantly when we allowed slavery to happen. Yes, slavery was wrong. Still is wrong. It's never stopped being wrong. It still happens. But somewhere along the way, our founding fathers were smart enough to put in our founding documents ways that it could be gotten rid of, and then God put leaders in place that said, I don't think this is a good idea. And in Abraham Lincoln's case, he was willing and to do what it took through a war of losing, I can't remember the percent. I think I saw it was 2 to 3% of the U.S. population at the time, to fight a war in order to stop it. And he didn't start the war that way. It didn't start that way. But along the way, that's how his thought process leaned towards as it got further along. Liberty, a lot of people want to take away our freedom of religion. But I would tell you, as Christians, we need to do everything we can to stand up for religious liberty, stand up in the public square when people try to take away religious liberty. When people want to pass laws that take that away from us, we need to stand up and speak truth with love. May I be a little pushy at times, but we need to stand up for what's right. Because that liberty that they want to take from us is something that God instituted and put in those founding documents that we should stand up for. We should stand up for that. Wholeheartedly, don't let anyone ever take that from us. And then thirdly, we should be pursuing the right type of happiness. The world's always going to put the happiness that's what they think it is. Their version of whatever it is. Their version of whatever they think is going to make them happy. But we know through Jesus Christ, we know where true happiness comes from. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean everything's going to be rainbows and unicorns. It's not going to be. But we know that's the direction we need to do. So now that we kind of looked at these last things, the praise team can go on and come up. Let's talk about here as I finish up about, so now what do we do? What do we do? 250 years old as a nation? Do we just kind of go, okay, we got through 250. Woohoo, you did a good job. Yay. Jesus will come back. It'll all be good. He might come back in your lifetime. He might not. I don't know. I haven't figured that one out. None of us have. So I think, and I am more convinced today than I have ever been, that we as Christians need to stand up more and more for our nation. Because when we're standing up for our nation and standing up for when we get it right, which we don't always get it right, and we stand up for Christian principles, it allows God to then bless our nation, which then allows us then to do things to protect and help and be doing the things that God expects us to do as a nation. I see it a lot of God, how God is moving among younger generations. God is drawing younger generations to Him in the United States and around the world faster than He has ever done. I was watching a quick podcast the other day of a young man who was Muslim. I don't know what part of the world he lived in, but he was telling about how Jesus appeared to him in a dream at one point, and then he said, okay, this Jesus thing, that's great. And he said, but I'm not going to follow him. It's too hard. I don't want to do it. And he talked about how Jesus kept appearing to him over and over and over and over again until he was like, there must be something to this. Jesus is doing that because He's trying to get people's attention. We're seeing people in our nation, younger generations. Justin and I have talked about it a lot with Sparrow Missions, about around the world, that there's a generation that is saying, I saw what my grandparents did. I saw what my parents did. I bet you there's something better. So now those of us that are older and middle-aged and younger, now how do we walk out those Christian principles and share that, hey, we're a nation that didn't always get it right, but hey, we want to be a nation that walks out godly principles. We want to stand up for religious freedom in our schools, in our nation, in the public square. The reason that we have such a challenge right now, I'm old enough to say this, the reason that we have such a challenge right now of Christians, like we feel like we're having to fight because we didn't fight enough the last 30, 40 years. We spent too much sitting on our butts. Someone else will do it. Someone else will serve in office. Someone else will serve on the school board. I don't need to talk to my teacher about what I think my kids should be learning. They probably know what's better. I don't need to say anything. I can't remember during the 70s. I was a kid. I don't remember Christians talking a lot about abortion. I'm sure we were praying, but I don't remember us raising a big stink. Now, maybe I missed something, but I can't find it. It's almost likely we went, well, we lost that battle. So my challenge to us today is, while we're here on this earth, God blessed us enough to put us in this nation, just like He blesses other people because He has purposes, to put them in the nations where He puts them on purpose, for His purpose. How do you walk out that purpose and not just let it walk by? You know, I watched a video of the day for a group of moms standing in front of an entire state school board and telling them, Christian women, as nicely as they could, we are going to make sure every one of you that won't stand up for women in sports are going to lose your job. And they meant it. This group of moms was like, they meant it. They're going to make sure every one of those people that won't stand up for young women in sports, they lose their job. As believers, that's what we should be doing. In love, I love you, but your truth is not God's truth, and I'm not standing for it. And if you think that, oh, that might hurt somebody's feelings, well, okay. Beth tells me a lot I have to watch out that I hurt people's feelings. I just am that way. So how do we walk this out? I'm going to finish up with this because I know we're going to have lunch soon. Be proud of your nation. Be proud that God put you in the United States of America. Just as somebody would be proud that they were born in Honduras, that they were proud being born in Mexico. They are proud that they were born in Thailand. Don't ever let anyone tell you you should not be proud for being born in the United States of America. You should be. It's not a privilege. It's where God placed you. It doesn't make you better than anybody else. In my mind, the way I was taught in the military, it holds you to a higher standard. Now walk it out. Understand that we made mistakes. We did. Do we still make mistakes? Yes. Are we going to keep making mistakes? Yes. And so is every leader in the world. They're going to get it wrong. I don't agree with everything that Netanyahu does in Israel. Sometimes it's like, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but I'm also not him. I don't see what he sees. I don't know his things. I don't understand that. I don't agree with everything our president does. I agree with some of the things, but not everything. But I also don't see the intelligence, see what's going on, and know what he knows. I didn't do those types of things when I was in the military. Secondly, turn off and ignore those telling you that the U.S. is a bad nation or that we should be divided by race, religion, color, background, economic status, whatever. Don't listen to that. Stop listening to that. If you see a news show, I don't care what one it is, and they're telling you about how bad we are and da-da-da-da-da, click, turn it off. Stop. But also, if you see the one saying, America's the best thing there's ever been and we've never done anything wrong, well, you know that's not true. We've made mistakes. But we are a nation that is a great nation, because I'm a little biased. I'm a biased person. I was born here. I served in the military here. I put a flag out almost every day in front of my house. And I do the same thing every day. Some of you are going to look at me a lot. I'm the military guys. I put that flag out, and the first thing I do is I salute it, and I walk back in my house. No, I don't do it in my underwear. I don't do anything like that. I heard Morgan Freeman say it recently. And if you know Morgan Freeman, actor, happens to be black. He was being interviewed by Mike Wallace. This was back in 2005. Mike Wallace was asking him about Black History Month. He says, I don't want Black History Month. It's like, Black history is American history. He said, you're going to regulate my history as a black man to 1 month? I think it's one of the smartest things the U.S. military stopped doing is having history months and separating us. When I was in, we did that all the time. We're going to celebrate this small group of people. Why can't we celebrate that we're all serving together? Because when we go on the battlefield, I don't go, hey, Asian dudes, why don't you go that way? And us white guys are going that way. You black guys go that way. We just served. Women in the back, guys in the front, we didn't. We just served. It's the same thing in Christ. We all serve together. Black, white, sinner, saint, it doesn't matter. We're all walking the same direction. Don't let people divide us. Thirdly, turn on those speaking truth about our nation, good and bad. I listen to Bill Maher sometimes because he says things that just rub me wrong. I'll listen to him and I'm go, ugh, that hurts. And then I'm like, there's probably a kernel of truth in that. I just wish he wouldn't use a little bit of profanity in it to say it. But that's me. I was around a lot in the military. It doesn't affect me the way it might affect other people. Pastor Franklin Graham, Pastor Greg Laurie, Riley Gaines, Charlie and Erica Kirk. Eric Metaxas just wrote a great book about the American Revolution. Pastor Josh Howerton are just some of the ones. Listen to people that are building our nation up, but acknowledging that we don't always get it right. Fourthly, and most importantly, pray over our nation. If we're not praying over the leaders we don't like, I've prayed a lot of years past in administrations, people I didn't like, but I still prayed for them because I know God can still move and change their heart. I pray, we need to do that. Back in the back, there's a prayer guide that I printed some, but we've also got, it was like 6 pages long, too much to print. We're going to email it out to you, a link to it today or tomorrow. It's a prayer guide. It's from Focus on the Family. And it's 30 days of praying for our nation. Take it, print it, use the shortened version of it, stick it where you pray, stick it in your kitchen, stick it to your refrigerator. Take a piece of tape and stick it in your bathroom. And for 30 days in July, pray specifically over our nation. Some of those prayers will be hard to pray. I read through a few of them, was like, I don't know if I like praying them. And I'm like, that's good because it's probably something I need to pray. Some of the things we're praying about things that are uncomfortable for me to pray about because I don't think the way that whoever wrote it wrote. That's probably a good reason why I need to pray about it. Maybe God needs to show me something a little different. God has used the United States as a nation throughout our 250 years for good and to stand for what is morally right time and time again. Have we made mistakes? Yes. Because we are led by people and people are fallible. Because God has used us as a nation, especially being the first nation to recognize and then support the state of Israel in 1948, I would say there are those that are internally and externally who are trying to divide us, destroy us, and tear us down. So we need to be praying about, God, how do you unite us? How do you pull us together as a nation? How do you get us to pray for people that we don't agree with? How do you pull us together? That's one of the things that I loved about Charlie Kirk. He talked to people that walked away calling him names, but would say, at least you had a conversation with me. I didn't agree with him, but at least he talked to me. We need more of that. We need more of that as a nation where we don't let people divide us. We don't let people tear down our nation. We do acknowledge who we are and where we came from, but we say, yeah, but look at what God has done since then. Because the credit for the nation that we have is never been a political leader. It never will be a political leader. It will never be how powerful our military is, because they can lose just as easily as anybody else, because God's bigger than that. It is about if a nation is following God and going the direction that he wants. But we as the church are responsible more than anyone else to walk that out. We need to be walking that out in our lives and our families, teaching our kids and our grandkids, those around us, and turn off the things that are telling us the opposite. But sometimes maybe listening to someone that we don't agree with. It's okay. You can still be respectful. Stand with me, if you would, as we're finishing up here, please. And I'm going to say a prayer over over us as a church and over our nation, and ask the altar ministry teams to go on and come on up. And I just want to say, as I've been talking about these things today, if some of these things about what I've talked about have just, you're kind of wondering my thoughts on it, feel free to ask me. I'll be at the picnic in the back. Ask me about what I think. But I want to say that as a nation, when we stand up and talks about these things, the most important thing is not any nation in the world. It's our relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you're here today and you have not accepted Jesus Christ into your heart, today's as good a day as any. If you come from a past, or you've done things, or you've seen things that you didn't have a good example, and you're like, oh, this is going to be hard, great. You be the one that takes the step out and says, I'm going to be the one that changes it for my kids and the generation and those around me, or even my grandkids or my great-grandkids, wherever you're at, and you step into that relationship with Jesus Christ. He's here. He's not going to beat you upside the head. He's going to say, I know the sins of your past, but I still love you, and I have a path for you for the rest of your life. All you have to do is just accept me and acknowledge your sin, and let's go. Let's go. It's amazing how he loves us that way. God, I just thank you that we live in a nation that has the opportunity to worship you the way that we are today. I thank you that we live in a nation that has religious freedom. God, but I pray that we as Christians do not sit back and watch when things are being torn down. That we stand up, we speak out, we get involved, we get engaged, we lovingly tell the truth of who Jesus Christ is. We lovingly tell people there is two genders because that's the way God made us. Boys and girls, nothing else. I'm sorry you and your children are going through this, but I know people, I know resources, I know a God that can help you walk out of this into a future of truth with Him. I know you may have been through an abortion, but I know a God that can love you and the man that happened with and can change your life. I know that you've come out of things in your life that God wants to deliver you from if you would let Him. God is a big God, can do that. God, I thank you for our nation. I thank you that we're here. I thank you that I had the opportunity to serve all the years that I did in our armed forces. God, I pray for our current president and his administration. God, they're not going to get it all right. There are many believers in his administration, and they are from lots of different faiths following Jesus Christ. God, give them wisdom, discernment, and good counsel for the president and our leaders. God, I pray for our Congress and our Senate that they would make better decisions and they'd get off their butts off of vacation and get back to work because they spend too much time on vacation. In Jesus' name. None of us get as much vacation as they get. It's ridiculous. And God, I just pray for our past presidents, from whatever party they were, the ones that are still alive. I pray for them and their families. President Biden and his family, God, he had a cancer diagnosis a while ago. I pray for healing over him and his body. And I pray for that in his last days on earth, God, he is following you. I pray for President Obama and Michelle Obama, God, that this new library they made in Chicago, God, that somehow that would become a place that the truth of God gets in it, comes out of it, and is spoken through that. I pray for the Clintons, God, that you work in their lives and you change their lives and work through them in Jesus' name. God, those were leaders in our nation. God, I specifically pray for each of them. And wherever they're at with a relationship with you, Jesus, I just pray that it becomes stronger, or if they don't have one, they have one before the end of their life, in Jesus' name. God, let us walk out of here today being empowered to love people in the truth of Jesus Christ. Let us walk out of here challenged, but let us walk out of here knowing that we are blessed to live in the United States of America. God, you founded this nation on Christian principles, on purpose, but that purpose comes with us having to understand who we are, where we came from, and walking into the purpose that you have us as a nation. God, thank you for us being here today. Thank you for this opportunity. God, we pray you bless the food as we go out in the next couple of minutes. Bless all those who prepared it, and bless the rest of the week for everyone that's here. In Jesus' name, amen.